Well, a very good afternoon. Welcome to our English Live on this 9th edition of the Vendée Globe. A beautiful day here in Les Sables d'Olonne. We're on day number 13, nearly 2 weeks in. And at the latitude of Rio today, well, Thomas Riong is the new leader. There's great support for him in the northeast of France, where he comes from. But there's not going to be dancing on the beaches of Dunkirk quite yet. It's all about the battle to get down into the south. The breakaway group, the top trio, are moving away. They have a big gap now. Meantime, Thomas Riong has just popped in a 515-mile nautical miles, 24 hours run. That is getting close to the record, which is 536.81 miles set by Alex Thomson during the last race. So could we see a new 24-hour record shortly, or are we going to have to wait until we get into the south? Our guest today is Alan Roberts, the top British Figaro sailor, who I believe is in the Canary Islands, waiting to start the Arc race. And Alan's done some sailing with Alex Thomson on the Hugo Boss, and also sailed the Imoca Charal with Jeremy Bayou. We'll come to Alan in just 1 second, but let's look at the rankings at midday today. And as I said, at the top of the table, Thomas Riong linked out is leading by 21.7 miles ahead of Alex Thomson. In third, Charlie Dallin is about 45 miles behind Alex. Then we have this big gap, 215 miles back to Jean Le Cam on Yes We Can. And there's 145 miles between 4th and 10th. So it's a close race behind the top trio. Kevin Escoffier, he is up to 5th place. He's passed Louis Burton in this match-up from the St. Malo sailors. Cousins by marriage, in fact, the two of them. Then Boris Herrmann is in 7th, our German skipper. Yannick Besthaven is in 8th. Now, Sebastian Simon on the Juan K design Arkea Paprec has passed Sam Davis, and Sebastian Simon is about 18 miles ahead. Going down to 13th, our Italian skipper Giancarlo Padotti is 89 miles off Benjamin Dutroux in 11th, so he's still in a nice little race, trying to push up to the top 10. Alan Rura is chasing Clarisse Kremer. Alan Rura is in 18th, and Clarisse is just a little bit faster on that legendary boat. Meantime, Didac Costa in 20th. He is about 4 miles ahead of Pip here. These two, as we've said before, they're former adversaries from the mini class, and they're still close together, having a great battle. And then there's 19 miles between 25th and 28th. Alexia Barrier, Miranda Merrin and Harry Hosela are very close together and having a good race. And Sebastian Destremo a little bit further down, but he's still in that group. He is very much the adventurer and keeps telling us that he's not looking at the rankings at all. So anyway, let's join Alan Roberts, I hope, in the Canaries. Alan, how are you today?
Yeah, hi Andy, all good here. Warm day here, and yeah, unfortunately I'm going offshore, so I'm going to lose out a little bit of contact from the guys for the next 2 weeks, but I've been following pretty intently.
So what's your project just now? You're going off to do the Arc race?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sailing on a Pogo 1250 with one of my sponsors, actually, CCAT Services, and it's just it's the Arc race, but it's the objective is to get to the other side. And for me, it's a great opportunity to play with the weather routing, understand a bit more of the weather, and bag a transatlantic crossing.
What have your thoughts been about this race so far? Obviously, you're very close with Jeremy. You know Alex well. What do you think of this race so far?
Yeah, so as we last spoke, I'm absolutely gutted for Jeremy, but I'm so glad to see him get back out there. The team did a fantastic job getting the boat up to scratch, and his family and friends around him really gave him the confidence to get back out there and re-motivate him. Quite nice that it ties up with a nice weather window to get down to the equator, so that's cool for him. In terms of Alex, I think Alex is having a great race so far. He handled the upwind at the start brilliantly, not his quickest point. We still haven't seen his quickest point of sailing yet in this race. He's nice and easy crossing of the doldrums, but I understand it's always pretty stressful, so I think the last few days he hasn't had much sleep. And now I think he'll be itching to get into those kind of medium downwind, VNG downwind modes, and show the boat, show the rest of the fleet and the rest of the world what the boat can do.
So you've been watching the race very closely then as an aspiring Vendée Globe entrant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just those guys, the top guys, that are having great races. You know, there's Sam Davies, Pippa Hare, you know, all the Brits and everyone that's out there. I think that was a pretty tough start to the Vendée Globe, going straight into the storm, and the guys and girls out there, you know, it's awe-inspiring, to be honest.
So, Alan, we've got one question for you from the internet, and the question is, what is your top speed on an Amoca?
Top speed on an Amoca? That's a good question. I think we were doing quite a lot of averaging of 30s, early 30s in Hugo Boss. I can't remember what our top speed was, but it was probably about 30, 35, 36 knots, sailing around the south coast of the UK.
What does that feel like?
Pretty quick. It's interesting because on Alex's boat, obviously he's encapsulated in the cockpit and underneath the mast, so you haven't got the classic feel of the wind blowing through your hair, the spray in your face. You're very much looking at the numbers, feeling the boat. You know, the boat makes a hell of a sound inside, and it's really noisy for the guys, and you drop off some pretty big waves, and you slam pretty hard. You know, we see some kind of 2.5, 2.7 G slams as you drop off the foils in choppy water. So it's pretty hard work just standing up inside. So it's physically challenging, but very different from a classic boat.
And comparisons with Jeremy's boat with the Chiral?
Yeah, I think the French boats, you know, are a little bit more conservative. They feel a bit more like they've kind of sailed against each other a lot. They've developed down a route that's maybe a bit more all-round as a boat. And Alex's boat is maybe a bit more specialised to, let's say, Vendée Globe conditions, VMG downwind, low angle, deep reaching. So, you know, that's Alex, and we know what he's like. He takes the risk, he lays his cards on the table, and he's there to win it. So, different boats, but I think there's more to come from Alex's boat, and I suspect that, you know, Charlie and Tom are pushing pretty hard to be where they are, and Alex maybe has a bit more.
Anyway, I'll come back to you in just 1 second, Alan, if you don't mind. We're going to look at the 3D animation, which gives us a good picture of the fleet overall. So the 9th Vendée Globe fleet is made up of 32 Amocas at the moment, stretching out over 3,138 miles this afternoon, exactly between Madeira, where Jeremy Bayou is, and the latitude of Rio de Janeiro, where the leaders on the top group are just now. And linked out, as I said, has been leader since 5 o'clock this morning. Off the Cabo Verdes, a group of 5 boats are having a close match. We've just seen them just now. And then further back up, we can see Koji Shiriashi, who's repaired his mainsail, is making more of a southerly course now. And we note Fabrice Amadeo there into the back of the fleet. Armel Tripon there and L'Occitane going reasonably well, a little bit further back than we'd want to be. And then we have the doldrums group just now, Pip Hare, Arnaud Boisset, and they're really struggling. Much more usual doldrum conditions. Stéphane Lederaison a little bit out on his own. And then further down the fleet, coming across the equator now. And we're seeing the group of 7, Jean Le Cam there furthest to the east. PRB, as I said, leading that little group now. And then to the leaders, we can see Thomas Riong furthest to the east, Alex Thompson furthest to the west, and Charlie Dallin in the middle. So say they're just at the latitude of Rio. The weather situation, well, we're all talking about this transition zone at the bottom of this cold front. Let's have a look at the weather situation in a little bit more detail. And so the weather for this Saturday, well, the range of the fleet, if you like, the span of the fleet is now quite enormous from down here just about at the latitude of Rio in Brazil here in Sao Paulo, a little bit further south. We have Alex Thompson here. We have Thomas Riong and Charlie Dallin, this breakaway trio. Now they're relatively broad reaching angles. The wind is probably around about here. They're coming down this cold front here, which will see them accelerate over the course of the day. I think Alex still a little bit further to the west, although you can see that in general, when you look at the tracking, he's reduced his gauge, he's reduced his angle on Thomas Rion. And then this group behind now, there's a 200-mile gap back now to this group, which is Jean Le Cam, Kevin Escoffier, Louis Burton, that group, and they're still in kind of beam reaching conditions. And then further up here, this group here are more on the wind, probably the wind still forward of the beam, as Benjamin Dutroux and this little group. Now then, going back up the track, in the doldrums. Now you can see the blue area much lighter, more unsettled, typical doldrum conditions. So here we have One Planet, One Ocean is highlighted. Now that is that's Didac Costa, but also in there Arnaud Boisset and Pip Hare, this little group of 5 boats. Very classical doldrums conditions, light, and the 2 skippers we spoke to today quite frustrated by that conditions. But I think particularly because these boats at the front had such an easy passage through, it makes it harder for them. A little bit further back up the track, well, there really is just the remnants of the northeasterly trades for this group. In particular, just at the Cape Verdes there, we have DMG Mori, which is Kojiro Shiraishi, who's still going relatively slowly after his mainsail repair. And then let's look back up the track to Jeremy Bayou, who's just at the Canaries here in an easterly breeze, maybe 15 knots, but going quite well. So that's the situation at 9 o'clock this morning. If we look at the second chart, we'll see in just a second, you'll get more detail now. You can see the wind barbs and the wind angle a little bit more accurately. But the key thing here is this cold front. Now the leaders are going to come down this cold front at relatively quick speeds. We can see they should be mostly downwind or broad reaching coming down here. But it's a little bit of a tightrope because this high pressure here and this high pressure here are squeezing together progressively, and they will close the door and form one big high pressure area of very light winds. So the target is to come down here, down this cold front, and get to the rotation of this low pressure here and come through this narrow gap. Now you can see that it's quite unsettled in here, and our routing shows a number of different jibes to get down here and into the south. So that's the target. Now we're wondering whether Alex is maybe coming more to the west to do one less jibe, but this really is the pinch point of the race just now, and that's going to be fascinating to watch how that plays out probably tomorrow or into Monday, but it's really all to play for at the front. Interesting to note that the skippers are really trying to get as much rest as possible to deal with and be as lucid as possible for this key part of the race. Let's watch and see. So let's watch and see over the next 48 hours. The Figaro as a training ground, particularly for self-management and things like that.
I think it's interesting to see Michel Desroyaux's Twitter the other day when he saw someone say that the Figaro is the training ground. His tweet was, "It's not a training ground, it's an obligatory rite of passage to the Vendée Globe." So very much not a training ground, and actually something that is required to be there. So that's quite interesting. But for sure, we see, especially in that lead pack, 3 different styles of sailing. There's Alex, who we all know is out there to win. He'll sail his own race. Make his own decisions, not really being led by fleet. There's Charlie in the middle of the 2, which he's very conservative, sails very fast, he knows how to make a boat go quickly and will take a less risk option. And then there's Thomas, who's a bit more halfway house between the 2, so happy to take a bit more risk. Just a grueling race that is relentless. There's a lot less sleep in the Figaro. We're out there for between 3 to 5 days. Averaging an hour of sleep a day, 10-minute blasts. And I guess the telling thing about it is that all the guys, except from the first Vendée Globe winner, have come from the Figaro class. And not only have they come from the Figaro class, they come back to the Figaro class after having competed in the Vendée Globe. And we saw Arnaud Leclerc this year coming back and winning it. So it's a lot of the guys consider it a tougher race in many ways. And I guess that's where they like to keep their tools sharp and their brain sharp. And I guess, if you're holding back, you get found out in the Figaro. So that's what it's great for.
So it's been interesting in the last 2 or 3 days just talking about the mental fatigue involved and how it's affected initially. Well, Alex was talking 2 days ago about how he'd really got into the red in terms of sleep, and he was missing his family, and he realised he really needed to get more sleep. Sam talking yesterday night about the stress and getting into real extreme sleep deprivation, worrying a lot about Roman, who had gone up his mast, and her realising that she had to sleep. And also we were speaking with Pip here earlier, and she's a big one on her self-management. But the Figaro is a great training ground for that, just learning how to manage yourself, learning how to programme yourself so that you can still operate.
Yeah, totally. And the way I see it, it's about learning your limits. It's knowing when you're in the red, when you're about to arrive at the red zone, when you're about to require sleep, when you require food, when you require water. So kind of self-management, really. And for sure, when you're tired, your brain can go into these kind of crazy spaces and down little rabbit holes almost, where you're worried about people, all the little things that are in the back of your head can wiggle through to the front. So that's tough, and the Figure, I guess, gives you more experience of doing that, puts you in that place more often. Guys like Charlie, he's podiumed in, I think, the last 4 Figaros. He's been sailing Figaros for maybe, I'm not sure how many he's done, but several Figaros, and he would have experienced that feeling several times every year over the past decade, whereas someone like Alex maybe hasn't, and he's been sailing 60 for coming on 20 years now, and he's gained that experience, but over a longer time. So it kind of feels like a good way to accelerate a lot of that self-management and self-understanding.
Talk to us about your own plans, your own programme. You want to be on the start line in 2024. What's your kind of pathway?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm pushing hard to be on the start line for the next race. At the moment, I've been sailing the Figaro for the past 7 years, and building up that experience, understanding myself, getting more into the offshore racing, developing different skill sets all the time, and not just doing the Figaro, but doing little snippets left and right of the Figaro. So I've did a lot of sailing with Johan Risham in the grey boat when he had that, then with Jan Elias in UCAR when he had Jean-Pierre Dick's boats for a season, and then for the last 2 years with Alex Thompson on board Boss. So for me, it's been good to dive into these other little worlds and continue to build up my experience towards the Vendée Globe. But the limiting factor really is finding the sponsorship and finding the partners to come on board to allow that program to be possible. So in the meantime, it's about continuing to build experience, continuing to network, and keep learning, really.
Okay, Alan, we had Pip here this morning, and this is Pip's video.
I'm good. My patience has been tried all night. Just blindly hoping that we might just be able to sail straight through here like the others did, but no chance. So it's been, nothing sort of major. We just had a squall at the beginning of the night, and then there's been a lot of shifting and changing, and I've had to work quite hard all night. But we're moving, and that's good. It's good to be moving. And just steady south. That's the game.
But Pip, you're having a great race.
You can't. It's still a 20-year-old boat. It's always going to be a 20-year-old boat. But Joff and I thought really hard about what we could do to make it easier for me to sail, but also easier for me to keep the numbers up. And I think the hard work has paid off. It's still really early days. I know it's early days, but I am more than happy with how we're going.
And how does the weather look then for getting out of the doldrums? Do you have a clear picture, or is it just a case of taking what comes?
Well, it's sort of it's a bit of both, really. I've been looking at satellite images and grid files, but trying to get everything to tally up is quite hard, and so I think potentially I've got about another 36 hours of this, I reckon. And then we might start to feel the trades on the other side. But, from the forecasts that I've looked at, the conditions that I've got right now are nothing like it. So I think it is just anything goes, and I just need to be really, really focused on just sailing fast south, you know, whatever the best sail is, whatever the best tack is, I just need to be on my toes and changing and changing and changing.
You seem to be getting pretty good at managing your mindset, and as you said in a video the other day, being the best you.
Yeah, and I guess I always think, you know, sometimes it's really easy to be lazy. I mean, and it's not lazy. Let's face it, it's not lazy. Nothing about sailing one of these boats is lazy, but you can sometimes, you know, you could let yourself get away with not doing everything possible. You know, you could make an excuse. You could say you're tired. You could say it's too much risk. But you know, every time I just kind of think, well, this is my opportunity to do it right, and so I've got to take it. I've got to take every opportunity. And you know, it doesn't always come easy. I have to bully myself sometimes, but most of the time I come out on the right side.
Well, Pip here, really, really inspirational, and I've been doing a great job on the water. Alan, your thoughts on Pip here? I mean, she's worked so hard to get onto the start line and just loving every minute.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and that's what Vendée Globe's about, isn't it? It's about people taking on the world at no matter what level they're in at, and I think it's awesome. And I'm so proud that there's, you know, we've got Pip, we've got Miranda, we've got Sam, three of the girls out there are English from the south coast of the UK, and that's awesome. She's taking it on, and she very much knows what she's in. She knows the boat she's got. She's at peace with that, but it doesn't mean she still can't, as she says in that interview, she still can't do the best job she can to get around the world. And you know, a classic example of that, as we saw, Benjamin Dutroux had a fantastic start and was right in the top, just behind Jean Le Cam for so long. Yeah, it's great. It's so cool.
Thanks, Alan. Our question from the internet, another little bit of a left field question for you, but somebody wanted to know, how do you think Sir Robin Knox-Johnston would get on the Vendée Globe?
I don't know. I mean, wasn't the last time he was asked that question, didn't he go out and buy him up at 60 and beat Alex and Mike? I'm not sure. I think he would love to be out there for sure. He's a seaman. He loves the sea and he loves being out there. But you've got to compare, you know, people at the same points in their career, and you know what he did back in the day was fantastic. It was such an adventure, and he pushed really hard. And it's like Pip said, you know, he pushed the limit of what he was capable of, and what the boat was capable of, and that was that back in the day. And I'm sure if he was that age now, he would be out there. He could be out there playing at the same level as these guys, and
indeed
give them all a good one their money.
And indeed, and at the same time, Jean Le Cam, such an inspiration to the not-so-old generation, but really, really, and as you say, I'm sure that Sir Robin would be sitting at home thinking about things. Maybe he'd have another go. Alan, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great race across the Atlantic on the Ark, and we'll catch up with you on the other side, I hope.
Yes.
So that's Alan Roberts, our guest today. Kojiro Shiraishi he's repaired his mainsail, and he is going in a more southerly direction, taking it fairly easy. It's been a big repair that's cost him many, many miles, but we know he's a super determined character.
今日何日か忘れました。金曜日、まだ波高が3、4メーターありますかね。やっとここまで来ました。あとこの L4 の最後のバテン、これを入れれば完成です。あともうちょっとです。もうちょっとでね、メインセール治ると思います。最後まで力を振り絞って頑張ります。皆さん、ついにメインセールが上がりました。ご覧ください。1週間かかりましたかね。チームといろいろ打ち合わせてやっとメインセール上がりました。まあちょっとね、上の方がもう完全に伸びきって不格好なんですが、もういよいよこの 3DI シカフレックスプラスというこのセールで 新たな冒険が始まります。これがバンデグローブです。僕のバンデグローブです。このセールとヨレヨレの J2 で果たして世界一周できるか、それがテーマになってきてます。船が沈むわけではないですし、マストも立ってます。頑張ってこのセールでどこまで行けるかチャレンジしたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございました。1000円ありがとうございました。やりました。
What I love about Koji is you really don't need the subtitles, you don't need to speak Japanese. It's immediately evident that he's happy to be back on the race course. He's done such a great job and he is a total legend. Join me tomorrow for our Vendée Globe live show when we'll have our guest will be Johan Richomme, the double La Solitaire winner. If you have any questions for Yo-Yo, then please post them on our social media channels on Facebook, on Twitter, or indeed on Instagram. Join us tomorrow.